Okay, thanks so much everyone for joining us today. As everyone is hopping on, I'm very, very, very excited to introduce Kristin Firrell. I've been wanting to have you not only on my podcast, Kristin, for a long time, but on one of these webinars. And so I'm really excited to have you on here. And I know some of this recording is going to be on our brand new podcast called Next Level Salon Leadership. It actually starts tomorrow. So we'll make sure that you guys get the very first episode tomorrow. And so we have Kristin Firrell. She began her career as a hairdresser at Vidal Sassoon. So that was a fun fact that I didn't know about Kristin in San Francisco. And then you went to Australia and she had joined a hair care manufacturer and ultimately was transferred back to the headquarters in the USA, where she held executive roles in education and marketing. Following an acquisition and subsequent move to New York City, Kristin served as Vice President of Education, initiating the development of a new approach to curriculum and education facilitation and the opening of a renowned salon professional training center. With a return to California, well, you've been to all the great places, Kristin, where everybody wants to live. She joined industry icon Paula Kent Meehan and worked on a variety of projects, most notably as executive director and co-director of the Global Salon Business Awards. In 2007, Kristin joined John Paul Mitchell Systems, yay, as vice president of education. Just a few years later, her leadership role expanded as new product development was added to her responsibilities. Today, Kristin serves as vice president, salon development, a department that supports the company's strategic direction for growth and expansion through digital and live learning, advanced education, and events. With her 40-year journey, okay, you must have started when you're 1 because you look like you're 40, from hairdresser to executive may be unusual. Kristin observes, my career path is owed to my roots as a hairdresser, a license that I keep current and still hold proudly today, whether creating new products, programs, advanced artistic and business education, shows, or events. Kristin's nurturing spirit and unfaltering commitment is to help all future and salon professionals to develop the knowledge and skills needed to achieve their vision of success, both personally and professionally. It is deeply rewarding to know that our mission at JPMS is and always will be to keep the success of salons and stylists at the heart of everything we do. Oh my gosh, Kristin, you have done so much. I'm tired after reading that. Wow. Okay, so Kristin, why did you get into this industry and how the heck, like, give us all your leadership principles of how you lead, because obviously you worked for the best of the best. How did you do it? What's that untold story for you?
Well, I have been so blessed. I've had tremendous mentors, and I think back to sort of my journey. I grew up, I'm actually born in Michigan, so you know that part, I think, but my dad taught
fellow Michigander.
Yeah, my dad taught at the U of M for many years, and actually accepted a position in Santa Barbara, California in the sociology department. So when I was, the summer I was turning 9, I guess, we moved to Santa Barbara. So I grew up in Santa Barbara in Southern California. And my dad, I come from quite an academic family. That wasn't sort of my calling. And I was starting at City College and not sure what I wanted to do. And still, as a kid was always organizing things, whatever it was, a horse show or a track meet or something around kids. And a friend of mine said, we should go to cosmetology school. And I was never that person. I was never the one doing everyone's hair and all of those things. That wasn't me. I was more like on the back of a horse, cleaning a corral or whatever. And I thought, why not, So we both started, and 3 weeks after we started, she quit, and it was the best choice and decision I ever made. I found my home. And what I really found was I loved the opportunity to serve, and I love the opportunity to create connection. And I would say that if there's a great leadership skill that I've developed at all from all of my mentors, is that relationships are the glue, period. And relationships are built on trust and respect and honor. And I've been blessed to have worked with some extraordinary people who have showed me and guided me through that it's shark infested waters, as you know. Like, you can build trust and trust can be broken, and you can have relationships that you think are very strong and real and be disappointed in them. And so the clarity around that, I think, is really key. But so I became a hairdresser, and then, right in the midst of becoming licensed, I broke my right hand learning how to country western swing dance, but that's another story. And found myself not able to do hair. And an opportunity presented itself to go work for a distributor. And so I went to work for a distributor for a period. That showed me another side of how you can serve and support, and through education, how you could create relationships and partnerships with salons and salon professionals. And that comes as a result of trust, right? As an educator, I can share my insight, my ideas, and my thoughts, so long as you trust in that and becomes conversational. And I did return to doing, going back into the salon, and realized that I needed more. And so I went and spent 6 weeks at Sassoon in London, actually. And when I left there, I couldn't return to the salon that I had started out in, and moved to San Francisco and went to work there. So that was kind of the transition to the Sassoon experience. And then, funny enough, I had a client who worked for the Australian consulate, and he kept saying to me, "You should go to Australia. You'd love Australia." I was 20 years old, and I thought, why not? And so I decided to move to Australia. And so I found a salon. The art director there, Russell Hyde, was a Sassoon guy. And I went to work for the salon, but I really had this manufacturer thing in the back of my head. And so I decided to start interviewing. And on one interview, happened to be with a woman by the name of Joanne Cowan, who still is the advertising director for InStyle magazine in Australia. Oh. And she said, "I'd love to hire you, but I don't have any positions available." So I called her every 2 weeks for 6 months until she finally hired me. And I started out as an educator, sales educator in the worst territory, and grew that quickly. And long story short, became education manager for Australia and New Zealand, and until I got transferred back to the US. So that was the span of like this 4-year window, little under 4-year window. And again, she's still my best friend. I talked to her yesterday. And that was back in 1982. So the span of time and relationships are key.
Okay, so first of all, we both share and we love to clean corrals, horse corrals. I did that as a child. I think most people don't even know that about me, but as a teenager, I don't know, this is so bizarre, but how many people on here in the chat box, like, you love the smell of horse manure. I love the smell of horse manure. I know it sounds so stupid, but I like begged my neighbor,
your soul.
Let me clean your horse corrals. And so that's what I did. And it's just so funny how that works out. But I think must be a Michigan thing. I don't know, Kristin, but I love what you're saying here. And I want to back up because you said you slipped maybe and said something kind of funny, but it's so true. I think really in any industry. And you said shark infested waters. So what did you mean by that? And talk a little bit about this, because we do have some of the people that are on our calls are mostly salon owners. We do have salon leaders, but we do have future salon owners and future salon leaders on here as well too. And so talk about that reality, because I think sometimes in cosmetology school, we protect our kids so much, it's kind of like raising our children, we protect them from the real world, but everything is shark infested waters. And so how do you navigate that, through it? And what I love about you too, Kristin, is you fought for everything that you wanted. And I want to dive into that in a little bit too. Like, how do you know what you want? Because I think a lot of people are so confused. There's so many opportunities in this industry, but they don't even know where to start and to figure out, what they want to do. And I know that we have salon owners now that are shutting down the door and thinking, what's next for me? We have salon suites. I just had one of my graduates call me and said she wants to shut down her suite, and she wants to know if she can come work with us in the school business. So first and foremost, shark infested waters. What did you mean by that? And how do you navigate?
Well, years and years ago, I guess it actually did come out sort of accidentally, but years and years ago, and if you haven't read this book, it's fantastic. It's called Swim with the Sharks Without Being Eaten Alive. And it was written by, I think, Harvey McKay. Goes back a number of years, but still very, very relevant. It's how to outsell, outmanage, outmotivate, outnegotiate, all of those kinds of things. I mean, it's a very interesting time in the world. I can only, say, and it's so important to recognize all that's going on, from obviously the impact of COVID-19 and everything we're still experiencing. We are not post-COVID. We are absolutely, in the middle. And I think for everyone, sort of feels a little bit like you're in shark infested water. I mean, there's people who swim with sharks, literally. We have Shark Week, like all of the things that we become fascinated with. I think, it's very true that this is a very tumultuous time. And when I talk about sort of the shark infested waters, as I look at it introspectively, what you say and you don't say right now is very relevant. If you say, you can say the wrong thing very simply, very easily, without thought, and you can also, by being silent and by not speaking, you can be in that same position. And so, I heard yesterday, pause and pray, like before you respond to things, really be thinking. And I think that's part of it, is that, before you step into potentially shark infested waters, are you doing so with intention? And it's a word that I've heard a lot recently is intention. Is it planned? Is it something that we're really, really thinking about? And I think a lot of people open salons without really having clarity in their intention, or, step into a new business. I mean, I've heard people say, I'm going to go into a suite. And I say, okay, well, now you're going to own a salon. No, I'm getting a suite like that. Right? And so the intention around stepping into waters that are not familiar, is something that requires a plan. People don't care what you know unless they know that you care. I know that's quoted often by John Maxwell. It's a very strong thing. You have to be in a position where you really care about what you're stepping into, which means when you care about something deeply, you're listening. You're listening, and you're really being aware and being intentional. And I think that that's been part of my path, is that I have learned a lot along the way. In the absence of leadership, people will follow anyone. And so the clarity around our choices today, and, there's lots of advice one can take. That doesn't necessarily mean it's good advice. And so being intentional and being thoughtful and making those choices that you really feel have been thoroughly explored are important. And in relationship to COVID, the decision to open, the decision to go to work, the decision to put yourself out there, in relationship to social justice, it's the same. Have we really intentionally? I think unintentionally we do lots of things, right? But intentionally, are we really creating equity and opportunity for all? And I can say, as I reflect on my own career, I could have done more with my influence and my experience. And I need to do more intentionally. Mm-hmm. And that's an important time for us in these shark infested waters.
Yeah. I love what you said. What you say and what you don't say is important, and to really, really be intentional. And I remember even through COVID and then the social injustice situation, I had to take about 2 days of a time out for myself, of just kind of figure out where I was at and start really educating myself. And same thing with COVID, because I made the mistake of educating myself by watching the news. That's the biggest mistake you could do. And so then I was like, you know what? I need to find the right material to study, whether it's the CDC guidelines, whatever it was at that moment, because I was walking in fear. And so I feel like if you're watching something or listening to something that's causing you to have a lot of fear, then it's not the right message, right? And so I work super hard in getting the right information. And I love that you said that, because I think right now, and I love that you said, in the absence of leadership, people will follow anyone, it's such a powerful quote, Kristin. And I think when we're talking about this, help the salon owners that are on today to really navigate whether or not they feel like they would know that they've done enough with this information. And so I know you did a study, you did study different salons. So talk a little bit about that, what you found out by studying the different salons, because you stated earlier before we started recording was that some salons, you know, are here and some are there in their thought process. So talk a little bit about that study of what you found out.
Well, I mean, this is unprecedented. None of us have a crystal ball. I think if we had one, you know, we'd find ourselves in 2021 because we'd gone through. I mean, I said to my team this morning, we have a startup every Monday and Wednesday, and we were talking about how this is the beginning of the second half of 2020. And when you think about since January, all that has occurred. And we're at varying degrees. You know, the UK salons opened up just this weekend. You know, the business has not been the same across the globe in terms of reopening. And we can learn, you know, we can learn from each other. And I think I'm so proud of our industry as I've observed the social platforms and the sharing and the learning that has occurred as the country, you know, rolled across, or as the world rolled across reopening, and what we know about social distancing and what we know about protection. And, you know, as an industry, the very first thing we learn, and I think we've all joked about it, and, you know, and yet I think everyone feels quite grateful that passing state board is like such a huge amount of that is sanitation, right? And safety and sanitation, almost to the degree that people are like, oh my God, that's all we learned. But the truth is that is the key, right? That is the key. And I feel very proud of the industry. Very little has been escalated by record. Of course, I don't know that for a fact, but by record, by salons reopening. And every salon that I know has taken this with every ounce of precaution and responsibility. I mean, it's a lot of responsibility to open your business doors and say, come on in. And it's not so much the guests coming in who are exposed, it's really the stylists. And so, and those who work and serve within that salon environment. So I think as we look at what's happened and the learning and the lessons, one of the parts of the study was to ask about in-person education, you know, education in general. And we've seen this surge of digital education. I mean, so much content. There's no shortage whatsoever of wonderful content, you know, delivered with great intention. And initially we saw everyone was really, you know, you could watch haircuts like paint drying, right? Or color applications or whatever. And then it began to shift. And two things really poignant that came out of the study that I think are really important. One is education is more important than ever. And never in all of my years, and I've been very involved in business education for a long time, notwithstanding the Global Salon Business Awards and the executive management program we created at UCLA for salon owners, but I've never seen the interest in business education and training around utilizing digital platforms and social media for growing business outweigh technical and creative training. And very clearly in this study, it outweighs. I've never seen the interest in business education to the degree. And I mean, that says two things, and digging down deeper into it, this is for sure true. People either wish they'd had it or feel grateful they did. So, you know, it's kind of like when someone finds out you're a hairdresser, usually they apologize for their hair or they ask for free advice. You know, there's usually sort of a juxtaposition on these things. Very true here. Salons that had put systems into place, who had savings, who had structure, who had created sort of the model that would support them through this kind of tragedy, felt the pain, but not nearly as bad as individuals who didn't have that. And I think the awareness and the heightened awareness around that is super, super high. So that's a really important thing, not to the exclusion of product or creativity or artistry or inspiration, but definitely in a higher percentile than the other. The second thing that was really interesting coming out of that is where they want to learn. And, you know, digital is for sure, you know, that place. The frequency of that varies a little bit, but most people are somewhere between weekly and monthly. The amount of time people are willing to spend between 50 and 60 minutes, 15 and 60, sorry. So it's a little bit to do with the attention spans, I think, in terms of people's willingness to sort of stay connected and engaged. But when we asked the question about when they or how comfortable they were with in-person education, it's almost exactly split down the middle.
Wow.
And so that says two things to me. One is we're starving social connection, and we can see that that has its downside as well as the connection upside, but it's totally uncomfortable or totally comfortable. Like, you know, and in the case of when someone is interested in-person, it's absolutely hands-on. So we had done a study about 2.5 years ago. And at the time, we were redeveloping all of our educational content, which we actually launched in January of this year, kind of ironic. But the same thing, everybody, the feedback from all of the surveys, both Paul Mitchell participants and non-Paul Mitchell participants said digital education was very important, and secondarily to that was hands-on. So look and learns and going to shows and standing back and watching it from afar, not so interesting. That was 2.5 years ago, and guess what? Same thing today. So you either want it digitally, or if you're willing for in-person, then you want it to be a hands-on. But still, business is the number one thing. So what does business hands-on look like? So we're used to hands-on haircutting or color applications, but what does that look like? And it's called rolling up the sleeves, pulling out my numbers, and understanding what I need to do to create structure and systems and process that will allow me to make it through this kind of thing in a different way in the future. So it's kind of confirming, but at the same time, it's also super important not to take that knowledge and skill for granted, because it's the lifeblood. If there was like you were talking about earlier, you know, we don't want to get shut down again. It's possible. Mm-hmm. Then what? You know, and I think everyone's been so excited and grateful to be opened again, but what if? Are those systems, are those processes in place to be able to leverage it? And not just in this industry. I have a good friend of mine who owns a restaurant, a big restaurant here in Los Angeles, and you know, huge weekend business, massive parking lots, you know, huge music scene, everything else, and they're just like, you know, the business isn't here, now what? And the good news is that I think salons are not having a challenge getting people to come in. In fact, they're having to regulate how many people, you know, are coming in and with what frequency. But it's still a trying time. It's still a questionable time. And how do we frame this, the just in case, as we move forward?
Yeah, no, I love that. And you know, it's interesting what you're talking about, because Sean and I, who, by the way, love Shark Week, he's my co-host with this Next Level Salon Leadership. We started a course. It's a 6-month course called Next Level Salon Business and Leadership. And so it's basically, we do one-to-ones, but the power is kind of what you were talking about, is in the masterminding together and sharing best ideas and brilliant ideas. And ironically, of course, we only run one once a year, Kristin, just because Sean and I are so busy. And so we just finished our 6-month course, but thank God we were all going through COVID together. And so, because together everyone achieves more, right? The teamwork. And so just hearing from each other's ideas, and we were kind of bouncing off ideas, and we were panicking together, of course. And kind of what you were saying earlier, which I love, is it's so powerful as a leader that you've got to speak up. You may not have the answers, be vulnerable, be transparent, but also lead. You know, because in the absence of people, you know, of a leader, people are going to follow, you know, someone, and it's just the way it is. And so talk about that as a salon owner, especially the ones that are listening right now live. What do they need to do to really educate themselves even more? And I love what you were talking about with business, like rolling up your sleeves and maybe even diversifying your income, kind of shifting how you run business. And I know for us, we finally got our online store up and running, right? And so navigating through that and making it even stronger and building that and, you know, marketing that as well too. So talk to that salon owner. What specific things do you recommend that they need to do to roll up their sleeves to stay in business?
Well, that's a loaded question.
Yeah. You're like, if I knew, then I would be making millions right now. What's your gut?
Yeah, my gut is we have to become better listeners.
Mm-hmm.
I always love to go, a friend of mine, Blair Singer, he said, you know, you need to focus on being interested, not interesting. And it's always been sort of in the back of my head. And I think now more so than ever before, we need to be really good listeners. It's absolutely a goal of mine, a deeper listener. And so as a leader, you often find yourself like you're supposed to have the answers, right?
Yeah.
And the truth is that the answers are in the people, right? The perspective is what brings power. And I think, well, you know, there's a point in time where decisions need to be made. And I think our organization is a great example of that, where John Paul is an extraordinary leader because he's a great communicator and he's a great listener. And he really asks more questions than he provides answers and poses more, but he's also a great researcher. And what comes with great research is really great listening and weighing the value of what everyone brings to the table. And so the reason I'm focusing on that is that this is a time as a leader in a salon environment where you really have to listen to your team and understand what makes them comfortable or uncomfortable. And same with your guests. And I think the salons that have shared with me sort of how they stayed connected with each other and with their customers are the ones that are feeling most comfortable now, because it's not a new conversation. It's a conversation that's been going on. Our art director for professional color, Colin Caruso, came up with this idea of this sort of conversation around, we call it social gathering, but it's sort of like, what are you doing to take care of yourself? And that's a really important, it's as important a question right now than ever before. What are you doing to take care of yourself? How's your mind? You know, there's so much knowledge and understanding right now of how much mental anguish people are still struggling with. And so I think the conversations with your team every day, and, you know, we refer to it as me time, but what are you doing to take care of yourself? And how are you staying connected? I mean, much like this, we were going into 2020 with this, idea of really transitioning into this digital education, with a lot of reluctance from salon professionals to jump on board. You know, everyone's on their phone socially, but are you really going there to learn? And then snap, overnight, like it shifted. But that connection is really important. Some people, you know, it makes me crazy. I'll get on a Zoom call with people and they never put their camera on. And it's like, no, I want to see your face. You know, like, how are you staying connected? And even though we're seeing our guests in our salons, keep in touch with the ones who haven't come in yet. Like, don't get, like, that's what you need to be doing digitally, and these digital consults and these digital touch bases, because the relationship, and it's always been this way, it's what I fell in love with from the beginning. The relationship that a salon professional, a hairdresser has with their client is like no other. There's no one that you feel more comfortable, you know, who has the right to physically touch you? Not even a doctor can come and be as connected as a hairdresser. But for your clients who aren't in the door yet, stay close to them. Stay close to them. You know, those connections, and stay close to the team. There's some team members who have come back to work. There's others who haven't. I have members on my team who are working from home with kids climbing all over them, with elderly parent concerns, with just life going on. How do we keep that connection going? I think that the connections are the most important thing you can do right now. All the systems in the world with no clients or without a team that's engaged aren't going to get you to where you want to be, unless you're deciding to become an independent contractor and go into the studio world. In that case, you still need to stay connected with your clientele. And I think the thing that's going to make our industry always stand out is that even with, to your point, the take-home sales, it's the recommendation of a friend. Retailing has always simply been that. And I can do that better than any other channel because you trust me. And it comes back to the very first thing we talked about. It's that relationship. So having the systems and process in place to maintain those relationships and that trust, that allows me, whether you're in my salon or not, to say, Tina, I want to tell you about, Paul Mitchell's new hand sanitizer. Why is it important today? Because every moment that I turn around, I am cleaning my station to make sure that everything is, whatever the dialogue is, where I'm going with that, but it still is this trust thing. And now I can say to you, and here's how you can get these products from me digitally. And I'm going to make sure you continue to get these personal recommendations. At the end of the day, yes, you need a great POS system. Yes, you need to set goals. Yes, you need to track your numbers. It's all the same key performance indicators that it's always been. The number of guests, the frequency of visit, your average ticket for service and take home, the number of services per guest, the number of bottles, all of those, rebooking percentages, all of those KPIs are crucial. But if you haven't created those connections and those relationships yet, then they're not going to help you really. And so I would up the ante on communication. When in doubt, communicate more than you need to. And I believe that companies inside of this industry or outside who are working their way through COVID-19 and Black Lives Matter and the fight for social justice will win because they're communicating and they're listening and they're responding with intention on either front.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, this is so, I could go so many directions on this conversation that I'm having with you because I know you have such a plethora of knowledge here. So for instance, we spent a whole month, but we could really spend a whole year on fixing your communication, because I would say the majority of our salon owners that are really struggling right now, because we do a lot of online masterminds. We have one tonight that we're doing, and they're really struggling with their team, communicating with their team, because they don't have a system. I love that you said that, because a system is something that's written down. Do you have a system? And so we had a system, Kristin. Well, now everyone is working 6 days a week. Now it's 5. They're going to go back to 4 days soon, because now that they've been able to see majority of their clients, now they can go back to their, schedule. Thank God, in our Michigan and Florida salons. But what's happened is I've lost communication with my team. And so thank God we have our one-to-ones with my salon leaders. We've been maintaining the salon leader group meeting every week. And so I can, and then I can, of course, connect with them one-to-one, and my daughter, who's my partner. But it's like, oh my gosh, I'm so glad I get to finally talk to them and see how they're really doing, and just, ask them that point blank question. How are you really doing that way? Because I can kind of navigate what's the next guest speaker that I have to have. Like, for instance, during COVID, we had a counselor, and then I had one of my business partners who was a psychotherapist get on a Zoom call with them, just to kind of let them know whatever they're feeling, it's okay, and to be able to talk through that. And we were able to actually pull out some information out of our team, Kristin, that I know I couldn't have done myself. But watching, like I said, like you said, with the camera is so important, because leaders are readers of people, but I can't read you if I don't see you. Mm-hmm. So even if the one-to-ones are via Zoom, a lot of the times we have to do it on the phone because we're traveling, but Zoom, I think, is so important. So talk about a good system that you think for a salon owner that they should have to stay close to their people, because I love that you said that, because that's the number one reality right now. We're going to lose our team members if we don't stay close to them. They're going to leave us. People don't quit companies, they quit people.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it raises so many questions, and I think there's a lot of different ways, and whatever you think is probably not what your team thinks. So the first thing to do is ask the question. And, what I've learned also, even more clearly in the last couple of years, and I learned, of course, my daughter, who's also a hairdresser, but, I would email her stuff, and she'd like, Mom, I don't ever read email. She texts everything. And what I've learned is, if I really want people to read email, sometimes I have to send them a text or a DM to tell them that there's an email. Right? So time is really a crucial component of it, and how people want to be communicated with, and what's important. So I had a wonderful 7 years of my time at Paul Mitchell was in new product development, and had the great fortune of being able to create our product innovation center. And when we opened that, product innovation center is made up of, two different groups of people: professionals, hairdressers who work in our test salon, testing products all day long, and chemists. And so you have these two very, very different types of people working together. And once you kind of get there and the clients start coming in and the chemists are in their labs formulating, like having that connection point, I was like, okay, how are we going to do that? And so we created something called Startup, which every morning we just got together for 15 minutes. And Valerie George, who's our VP of R&D, who runs the facility now, and she's doing just an extraordinary job, has continued that. I mean, I did it like every day, and then we went to every other day, and then, I think she does it on Mondays now. But when COVID hit, and we immediately jumped into this sort of digital space, we started that with my team. And every day we just met for 15 minutes. And pretty quickly, two things happen. One, and this is what I think is most important, is you can all show up, but if everybody isn't talking, then it's a similar conversation. And so it has to be created in such a way that everyone has ownership of it. And so we shifted actually to creating a calendar, and everyone else volunteered to host the calls. I think that's a big difference. When it's my meeting, I can drive it, and I might contribute at the end of each one if there's something specific that needs to happen, but they set the tone, and 90% of the startup meetings we have to do with work. And so people set a tone. Today was, what's your one professional goal for 2020? But we've done everything from your favorite pasta dish to what's your, go-to workout move or dance move or whatever. And at the end of June, we're like, okay, do we keep these going or do we cut them back? We've been doing them Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. And the team said, no, we definitely want to keep it going. Let's make it Monday and Wednesday. And on Wednesdays, let's call it What's Up Wednesday, with a little bit of business stuff thrown in. That's one way, it's working for us. I have other thoughts on it. Create a DM group, because you know what, if it's too hard to get everyone together, that's one way to keep conversation flowing. But to me, I think the key to this, Tina, is participation. If it's my meeting and it's my update and I'm going to tell you what's going on, that's only relevant to a select few. The most important piece is everyone else's ability to participate. So what we do on our call is that one person hosts and everyone has to play.
Yeah. That's so brilliant. I something that you said really stuck with me, because it started to make me think, am I really paying attention? And so the salon owners, salon leaders on here, is everyone participating? And I've done this in the past where I'm like, okay, so-and-so hasn't been talking today. They're pretty quiet today. What's going on with them? And so how can you make sure that everybody participates? Of course, we've gone to Zoom calls, thank God, because it's so funny. Before, I always wanted everybody to be on Zoom calls. We met in person, right? But unfortunately, I'm out of state. And so I can't always be with them because I travel so much. And so now they're all on Zoom, and now they're loving it, and they all have their cameras on. But there are some that participate and some that don't. Some are just a little bit more quiet. But the cool thing is we have a chat feature where they can, type into the chat. So are you using Zoom to its fullest, as well? And I love that you said that. So talk to that salon owner that's having a hard time really communicating, or I don't even like using this word, holding them accountable, so to speak, having hard conversations with the people, only because they weren't having the conversations in the first place. So now it's a hard conversation. So talk to salon owners and leaders right now, because I know that you're in the trenches, Kristin, and you have hard conversations all the time. Talk to them how to be better at communication, and I don't even like using this term, but I've heard it, so I'll throw this out there, of not being held hostage by a team member and thinking you have to keep them, because if you don't keep them, then they're going to cause problems on the team. I mean, we've heard all these stories, right?
Yeah. Well, again, everybody's motivated differently, right? If there's one thing that I think has occurred through all of this, is that, perhaps things we have taken for granted, on, whatever those things might be. And understanding people's motivation. I always love the term, and I have no idea whose term it was, but they say if you take from one, it's stealing. If you take from many, it's research, right? So I always love the notion of not goal setting, but goal getting. Like, it's not about setting goals, it's getting what you want and what's your motivation. And I think at this time, especially understanding what people's motivation is really important. So those hard conversations that maybe, you know, people not showing up on time, or people showing up not present, or you know, not agreeing, or not following the process, or not following the protocols, or any of those kinds of things that, you know, or there's gossip, or there's whatever. This is probably the best time to address and understand. And again, it's about asking the right questions. What is the motivator? You know, what are you looking for? How can I, you know, they saying, you know, you can get whatever you want if you help other people get whatever they want, right? So how do we help people get what they're looking for? And it comes from asking the questions. What's the most important thing right now? The most important, I don't know what to do with my kids right now. You know, my house situation, my financial situation, my emotional situation, my whatever my motivation is, I need to understand that. And then you got to ask permission. So help me understand what's motivating you right now, because we need to be working together as a team. What's the most important thing that your work can contribute to you right now? And, you know, 6 months ago, somebody might have said my paycheck because I want to go on vacation. Now it's because I want to not lose my car or my house or my whatever. You know, I mean, people's motivations are very different. It's a good time to refine what those things are and speak to those. In order for us to move forward, we all have to participate. I want to help you get what you want, but I can't if you don't help me get what I want, right? Which is teamwork. You have to function as a team. Never before have you had to communicate more effectively. And you know what? It might not work out for everybody. That's the other side of it. Some people aren't maybe willing or comfortable to put in the work right now, and you have to know that too.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I love the question, what you just said, what's most important to you right now? I mean, your one-to-one could start with that. Well, first of all, start with one-to-ones, because people aren't going to feel comfortable sharing this in a group setting. And so what are the types of conversations that you can have with your people in the one-to-ones? And that's really powerful. So talk a little bit more about, because I've heard this many times and I want to understand it a little bit better. So in your perspective, I love that you said perspective is power, which I love that. So you're only as strong as your weakest link. So let's talk about that process on a team, and because you've led teams, and I'm always thinking, oh my gosh, I hope I'm not the weakest link on the team, because, you know, let's talk about KPIs. That's the scorecard. As I look at the scorecard of my business, and I'm thinking, if everything rises and falls on leadership and I'm not hitting the numbers that I want to, I'm looking in the mirror thinking, okay, what do I need to do differently? What do I need to shift as well with myself first and foremost? What do I need to fix? And then what do I need to coach my team to do? So talk about you're only as strong as your weakest link. What does that mean to you, Kristin? And how do you navigate through that?
So what you permit, you promote.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So the key is really expectations, right? Disappointment is when you don't meet my expectations, but the question is, do I even know what they are, and do you know what they are? And so again, I would come back to that conversation around what are the expectations, whether it's establishing, you know, a specific goal. The specific goal is going to play out to whatever it is I'm trying to achieve. So, you know, when we're looking at these conversations and the weakest link in relationship to what? The weakest link in relationship to the teamwork, link in relationship to the financial contribution, the energy, the, you know, motivation. You know, there's definitely a big difference between the people who show up ready to do anything, anytime, anywhere. And, you know, it was one of the greatest lessons I learned very early in my career. And I think I'm a good example of it, where though the license I treasure the most and the the most important degree that I received is one of cosmetology. I went back to university when I was 43 because I wanted to learn more. And while I was in those courses, oftentimes I would be like, I knew that, or I wish I would have known that, or wow, now I'm going to apply these things. You don't know what you don't know, right? So as a leader, you need to understand. And what I found when I went back to school all those years later is I understood the principle of something, but I didn't understand the why. And so I was, I was able to deliver on something, but without understanding the framework behind it. And I think that's one of the biggest problems that hairdressers experience as it relates to business and KPIs and goal setting and numbers and all of those things is, I don't know what the why is. So you're telling me that my average ticket needs to be $75. What does that mean to me? Well, if you have 200 guests who come in every 6 weeks and they spend $100 average, then your, commission rate could be X, or your take home, what you can put in your bank account. Like if that's your motivation, paying your rent and having a certain amount of money left over, I have to break it down to the smallest common denominator. So it's like, that's my why. My why is, this is how much money I need to earn. My why is, I want to be acknowledged, or I want to raise my prices, or I want to do all of these things. If that's my why, how do I get to the knowledge and understanding of my why? And as an owner, if you can understand the why, and that comes back down to motivation, you can establish steps to get there. If the why is, I want to be successful and I want to go to work and feel happy, then what does happiness mean to you? Be that person who shows up. You've got to find out the why. I don't know that you can go anywhere without that.
So good. Yeah, basically, what is your why? Why are you in business?
If I was really in my office in Century City, I have that on the wall behind me as a mic, and that's the question. What is your why? What is your why? And education of any form is about that, right? Why do I want to learn this? Not for the sake of having read the book, but because I want to be able to apply what I've learned in a different way to expand who I am and how I am in the world.
So good. And I love being educated too, because I love listening to podcasts because it expands my why too, Kristin. And it's like, oh, that's my why too. You might hear somebody's why and you think, oh, that's my why. And I think, that's the bottom line. And we talk a whole month in our Next Level Salon Leadership, how to fix your hiring. But what happens is in Fix Your Foundation, when you come up with your values, right, all of a sudden your hiring is already fixed because you hired people to your values. And so for instance, we're in the business of changing lives. So I couldn't even believe it, but I figured it out. Like, great leaders ask questions, like you were saying. So this past week, I said to my salon leaders, I said, okay, we're going to start out our calls with whose life did you change this week? And they're like, oh, wow. Yeah, because if we're in the business of changing lives, I heard some incredible stories last week. So now I'm going to be able to start a book just of everything my staff has done to change people's lives, because that's what we do, right? But you said something super powerful, and I don't want anyone to miss this. Earlier, you said, if they're the weakest link. So I was imagining developing, I love to do leadership tools, as you know, Kristin. And with the digital platform. And so I have, I'm thinking, you're only as strong as your weakest link. And the question would be, am I the weakest link? So ask yourself this question. So I believe as a leader, you have to be one of the biggest persuaders or motivational speakers in the room. And so it's important to learn that skill of being a motivational speaker, right? Inspiring speaker. And so I was imagining 3 circles of, am I the weakest link in teamwork? Grade myself scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the best. Am I the best team player in the room? 2, financial contribution. Am I the best or am I the weakest in the financial contribution? And energy. Am I the best at bringing up the energy into the room, or am I the weakest? Scale of 1 to 10. And we call it, it's a value of self-awareness, Kristin. And so one of our biggest values of being self-aware. And so be self-aware of those 3 things. What does that look like? And so it could even be as simple as a leadership tool with the whole team, and then talking about in the one-to-ones, and they can self-identify at that point. And some people may think I am the weakest link when they're not. And you could say, no. And so, well, what are you going to do about it? If you feel like you are the weakest link, what could you do? And I love when you're talking about me time, because that's probably the most contribution I've made is on me time, because I figured that out a long time ago, that if I don't take care of myself first, I'm not going to take care of the people around me. Yesterday, I had the greatest me time ever. Just finally got back into church, and it's almost seemed a miracle just to be with people, you know, in church, and then getting on the boat with my husband. I like to call him my boyfriend, of just time alone with just the two of us, you know. So what does that me time look? So comment on the weakest link leadership tool idea, and then also comment on how do you take care of yourself, Kristin?
You know, I think what you've outlined is, you know, taking personal stock, right? So, you know, the visual of the linkage and those three components, I think, are really, really powerful. You know, how we show up as leaders doesn't mean that we don't have hard days. Doesn't mean we sometimes question, you know, whether or not we're coming from the right place. You know, we all have things going on. We have life going on. We have death in our families. We have challenges. We have all of us have all of those things, regardless of role. You know, if there's one thing, is COVID definitely doesn't discriminate. It, you know, it's across all communities and all cultures and all people and all over the world. I've never seen anything.
I think we lost Kristin. Type in the chat box if you can hear me. And I do not hear Kristin. Hopefully it's not on my end right now. So if you could type in the chat box, I can hear you. Jade says, okay. Can you hear Kristin? Put in the chat box. Yeah, so she's frozen. Okay, all right, it's not me. I was thinking, oh my gosh, my internet has been kind of bad. She'll probably hop on here in a second. Oh, there you go. You just have to unmute yourself. They're all like, she's frozen. We can hear you. Okay.
Okay, sorry. My apologies to everyone.
No worries, Kristin.
Sorry?
I said no worries.
Okay.
I'm glad you're back.
Yeah, so I mean, I believe that, you know, a system like that is a visual. And I'm a big person about visuals. I mean, if I want to think about the weakest link, I'm going to put a chain across the top of my computer and look at it every day, or have some piece of, you know, this. I wear a bracelet on my wrist, and it was a reminder of a friend of mine, a dear friend of mine who passed. And, you know, it's just a reminder for me to look deeper, because I had an assumption around him and I was wrong. I was wrong for a lot of years. And so I have a WW, you know, hey, what would you do? It's a reminder for me. Once I learned and figured out that I wasn't listening deep enough, I wasn't learning deep enough, it's a reminder for me. It's like my mom used to wear like a safety pin or whatever. What do you need to do that's a reminder? You know, I love what you've just described with the weakest link in a chain. How can you make sure that even when you're not thinking clearly, you show up with that reminder and put that kind of system and process in place for you? Because you are the model. And you are going to be looked at as a leader. And that doesn't also mean that you're perfect. It's okay not to be perfect. And it's okay to be vulnerable and ask people to call you as you would call them, and permission for it. You know, it's when someone feels like they can't say something to you, then you're in trouble. That's when conversation starts happening around you. And so you've got to be in a place, as comfortable as it may be, to say, you can call me on the same things. I'm modeling the same things that I'm expecting of you. I'm not asking you to do anything I'm not doing myself. And that is an important thing, whether you're talking about how you care for your guests and the sanitation guidelines that you're modeling in the salon, whether you're behind the chair or not. just like how you're communicating, what you're upholding. And I think that what you permit, you promote is really powerful, because if you allow it to happen somewhere, then you're basically saying, well, this person gets a different set of rules than this person, and which are different than mine. And they can't be. They have to be the same. And again, I would reference, I think he is a great model of that. You know, he is the first, I mean, I have seen him on the floor packing boxes. I have seen him putting together things. Like, it's not like, okay, everyone places. It's no, let's roll up our sleeves and do the work. And the work can be the physical space, it can be the emotional space, it can be the spiritual, social distance, I saw you yesterday, space. You can be, you know, wherever you need to be and responsible in that process. And I think that's the key. Are we doing our part, or is it about me? Is it about others? And I think if there's something we're seeing in the world, it's realizing that the world doesn't center around me. You know, I can and must do unto others, and then I'll receive. And then I will be the recipient. But first I must serve.
Wow. This is so good, so powerful. Jade just said, I'm loving this so much. Thank you so much, Jade. And Jackie, thank you so much for being on, you guys. Wow. Okay. I know we only have a few minutes left, and I want to hear like what you do for your me time. But obviously all of this goes to, and as I think of my mission statement, I'm in the business of changing lives. So whose life did I change? And I think I'm trying to get my team a little bit unstuck on everything happening around in the world, right? And also unstuck of maybe some of the clients aren't so nice or whatever. Like, whatever you focus on is going to grow. So if I focus on changing people's lives, what's going to grow? You know, I'm have this ability, and you never know. Someone walking in fear, you might even give them faith when they walk in and they spend time with you. And it all goes back to that scorecard of retention, right? And so I asked my salon leaders last week, I said, hey, how are you getting feedback, like real feedback from your customers? What does that look like? And so let's have a written plan. So now everyone has to come with a written plan this next week in our salon leader call of how they're going to get feedback. And so we're going to have like a checkoff system. Kristin, what do you think is the very best way to get feedback from customers? And what do you think that the retention rate should be in the salon? So I asked my team, I said, well, what's like, okay, that's cool. You think you're getting good feedback. What's your retention rate? So again, the scorecard, you know, reveals everything because numbers reveal the whole story. And they're like, I don't know what my retention rate is. Okay, well, let's look that up and see where you're at with it. So what do you think retention rate should be if it really is incredible service that they're giving to their guests, A, and then B, how could they get feedback the best way?
So A, if you don't ask the question of how your guests would evaluate that, you're guessing. So the first question would be, do you know what your customer's expectation is and why they would make a decision to come back or not? And again, that's about asking those kinds of questions. And especially right now, like it might have been difficult to ask those questions in the past. I think it's really easy now.
Yeah.
You know, at the point of confirming an appointment, we want to make sure that this experience for you, Tina, is everything you want it to be and then some. What are the most important 2 or 3 things about your guest experience so we can prepare effectively for you? And you can do those kinds of things in written questionnaires through emails, or you can have that conversation, because I can't evaluate that. If you decide not to come back to me, why did you decide? And so there's the before and there's the after piece. Did I meet your expectations? You specifically said to me that you were nervous about being in the salon, being in an enclosed environment. You know, did I serve your specific needs? Not the group needs, not 100 people's needs, yours. Mm-hmm. And that's going to come from a questioning process. And to be honest, there shouldn't be any turnover of guests right now.
Yeah.
The people who have made the decision to come back to the salon missed you. Some people have made the decision not to return yet. Mm-hmm. Could that be going to a restaurant or a store, to a salon, or wherever? They're not comfortable. So if they've made the decision to make an appointment with you, they're already saying, one of my friends, she sent out a direct message to all her customers and she said, hey, everybody, I'm trying to gauge what my scheduling should look like when we reopen. Please DM me back. Don't email me. Don't call me. Please DM me back. 1, 2, 3, or 4. 1, get me in as fast as possible. 2, get me in soon. 3, I'm okay. 4, it's probably going to be a long time. Shocking to her. It was pretty surprising for me too. A lot of people were like, 1, get me in right now. That is telling you that those people care and they want to be a part of it. But don't take that for granted. Make sure you still understand specifically what people are looking for. And to me, that's the key here. It's asking questions, listening. And then you know what your retention rate should be right now? 100%. And rebooked 100%. Because there's absolutely no reason why this group of guests won't keep coming back for generations to come and bring everyone they know. How you handle that right now is your future.
Yeah. I truly believe with crisis comes opportunity, and this is a top opportunity to really retain our guests and to ask them questions like you said that we've never asked them before. And as a leader, you have to see those things. And so what can you do to make shifts in your business to persuade your team to make shifts in the business as well? And so if it is to be, it's up to me. And I love it because these are always going to be free webinars. I'm going to keep these going forever. As long as I live, you guys, I can promise you that. And of course, we're taking some of this content from every single person on our brand new podcast, so you'll be able to listen to that as well. So what do you do to take care of yourself, Kristin, in me time? I want to hear. Let the world hear.
So 2 things, and it's a very emotional topic for me. I'm a grandma. I have 2 grandbabies now, and about 16 months ago, I guess it was before Mother's Day last year. I'm definitely a person who works a lot and works hard. Always have my whole career. It's just me. I'm just always thinking in that way. But I pick up my grandson and I nearly fell. And I realized that I nearly fell because I wasn't strong. I didn't have enough core strength. I wasn't healthy enough. And it was like a huge, huge eye opener for me and life changer. And like overnight life changer. And so in the last 16, 17 months, I've really shifted that. And, aside from having lost quite a lot of weight, which is an important sort of byproduct of this, my core strength and how I care for my mind is very connected, I realized, to my body. I didn't realize that. I mean, we have our heart and we have our hands and we have our head, and we've got to use all 3 of them simultaneously. So exercise has become just a part of my life. Now I can pick them up and throw them around and get up and down on the floor. And so that's my balance, is my family. I also am a lifelong lover of cooking and entertaining. Not doing so much entertaining, but definitely I love to cook, and I love the solitude that brings, but also the camaraderie that it brings when you're celebrating with other people. And so those are 2 primary things, I guess I would say, for me. And, it's really eye-opening when your health gives you a wake-up call. And I've had other health wake-up calls with cancer in the past. Thankfully, I'm good and clean of those things. But even that didn't wake me up to the same degree that almost dropping my grandson did. And it's important to understand that, that was my health. And I did a lot of things and changed a lot of things around, understanding breast cancer and all the things that go along with that. But to put someone else in harm's way is a very different wake-up call. And so I think when you think in those terms of my health as it relates to how I can serve my family and wanting to be a part of those children's lives, was very different than just looking at my own life. And I don't think I put it into that kind of clarity, a perspective at the time with my cancer run-ins that I did when I nearly fell. So those are the things.
That's so powerful, Kristin. I too am becoming a second grandma too, because my daughter is going to have another baby. And it's so true. When the why is big, let's go back to the why. When the why is big, the how gets a lot easier. And so if you're not able to do something, consider that maybe you just need to shift your why. And my why is going to be getting up and down from the ground for my great grandchildren, because I can do it now for my grandkids, but will I be able to do it for my great grandchildren? It does. It means the world, you know, to you, to be able to spend time with your grandchildren.
Never spent so much time on the floor.
Yes, I know. Yes, the majority of my time is on the floor as well.
Yeah,
so,
sure.
But oh my gosh, everyone is just going on and on about how much they're really, really loving this, Kristin. I wish I could have you on even longer. Trust me, I think we could go for a full 2 hours. This is incredible. The information that you give is just beautiful. Kristin, I can't thank you enough for being on. Any famous last words from Kristin Firrell?
Oh, wow. Just love big, unconditional. Be the change we want to see in the world.
Yeah, it's good.
That was mine, but Gandhi said it best.
Yeah, love big. Perfectly said, Kristin. That's how you lead. Love big. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Kristin. We'll talk soon.
Okay, thanks everyone.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.